Hey guys, I promised you guys that I would walk you through the Blue Sky Bio. So when you open Blue Sky Bio, and you're gonna fabricate a surgical guide, and you have to select here surgical guide, and it'll take you to this window, and then import patient CT scan. So I'm gonna click on that, and then you locate where the CT scan is. So in my case, I got the CT scan located in ExoCAD, and it's going to be, let's see here, Garcia's, Elias. So if you see here, what you need to make sure is if you're taking your CT scan at the office, make sure you have the files are going to be on DCM or DICOM. If you're somebody's giving you a CD, make sure they give you the files with the right. If you see here, Garcia Elias, I'm going to keep hunting different subfolders until I find. You see those files are going to be ending in DCM, that's DICO. Okay, so you select that folder, or you can select Garcia in this case, and it'll find it itself. We're going to select Garcia only. I'm going to click OK, and the computer is going to locate the DICOM files. So these windows that they're going to open, go ahead and click OK. These are just for the first telling you what patient it is and all the data, demography. I mean the last name and name of the patient. You click OK, and it's going to start reconstructing the DICOM. This is a field that you're going to be seeing. Usually I don't mess with that, so it really doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then it's going to go to the main window. Okay, at this point, this window that opens up is if you have an STL file, like the maxilla. We have the maxilla in this case, so I'm going to go ahead and import the STL model on the maxilla in this case. So I can click here, then it's gonna pretty much ask me where to locate that file, and it's taking a little bit longer, so that is gonna read. So as I said before, try to get a PC computer. This is a PC, it takes a little bit longer, even though it's a very powerful computer. So I'm going to go again to Elias here, and you see I got upper model, lower model, and the occlusion. So the one that I care for is upper model because we're going to be doing an implant on tooth number 3 on the fellowship with a sinus elevation. So I'm going to go ahead and click that and see it opens this window here, so you can see the actual file that I'm going to be importing on this window. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And the beauty of this is most of the time automatically it'll stitch it together. So that's why this window shows up. So I'm going to go ahead and is a maxilla. I'm going to click OK and see what happened to see if the calculation is going to be done by itself. If not, I'm going to show you make sure confirm proper. I'm going to click OK, and if you see it did not line it up properly. So one thing that I want to see is if my staff took the CT with the open teeth, which they did. So what I'm going to do is first you can maximize each of these windows by going to the upper right corner. Each window has those buttons. So if I maximize here, what I'm gonna do on this lower bar is I'm gonna set up the threshold of that I see less noise, so I only see the teeth and a little bit of bone without any noise. It is a little bit more tricky when you're working with like this case, the patient has an implant here, so you got a little bit of noise there. when you're working with a lot of restoration, it's a little bit more tricky. So I'm going to leave it up to there, and I'm going to minimize this window. So I'm going to go back to the model. One thing that you have to make sure here on modules, you want to make sure that you have it on the advanced. Okay, when you have it on the advanced, it's going to start giving you all the panels on the right side. So panels that you want to have active is going to be the ones that I use mostly is surfaces, and you see on the right corner over here how things will start showing up, surface and the implant list. And then I like also to use the tooth list. I like to use a nerve. I like to use the model manipulation, and then the guide fabrication. So those are the modules that I like to have on my right side of the screen, so it's easier for me to navigate. Okay, so when you go to advanced, also it's going to give you the implants, the tooth, this arch with a rainbow. It pretty much give you all the coordinates on the CT scan. So I'm going to go and realign the maxilla. So what I want to do is I want to go to surface, and on surface, what is showing is, let me see if I can expand this a little bit better for you guys to see. So on surface, you're going to see that you have the model that I imported. You can make it visible, invisible. You can see here how I can disappear it or appear it. You can change the color. In this case, it's an object. It's an OBJ file. It's not an STL, so that's why it shows all the colors. For me, it looks cool like that. So what I'm going to do now is how I'm going to merge that model with the existing CT scan is I'm going to go to model manipulation, okay, right here on the right side. And I want to, let me go back to surface, and I'm going to rename this model, and I'm going to put maxilla, so it's easy to track. And then let's go again to model manipulation, and I want to align maxilla. Okay, so that's the only model that is imported to the CT scan. And I'm going to align it by doing points, because points, you align it to the CT scan. So I'm going to select points, and it's going to open an extra window. That extra window is going to have the rendering of the CT scan, the 3D on the left side, and the model itself. Remember that I've always told you to get a computer, a PC, and get a mouse that has a 3 buttons, so it's easier to manipulate the model. You can expand it with a wheel. If you leave a click, you can translate it, or you can rotate it with a left click. Okay, so the idea is that you're going to make points, and making points is you have to put hold the shift key down, and you have to make points on repeatable or the same locations as you have on the model and the CT scan. You can let go the shift key to kind of rotate and do whatever you want to do, expand or translate the model. But to make the points, once again, hold the shift key down, make a point, and repeat that point on the other surface. So I'm making all my points here. You have to have, I think, at least 5 points. So this is a very repeatable, this lobule here of the canine. So I'm making it now. I'm going to see if I can make an occlusal, probably here on this molar and here. Okay, so let's see what happens when I click OK. It's going to do all the calculation. And now, if you see, the model is pretty good with your CT scan. Now, how do we verify that? Is we go to the upper left side on this sagittal cut over here. And first, I'm going to go back and I'm going to center, make sure that I'm going to make sure that my coordinates and my points are centered exactly where I want it. Okay, you want to put it right in the middle of the crest or the fossas in this case, and you can click and drag these squares, whatever views you want to see or what the field of view is going to be. You can click on these circles at the end of these arches and you expand that field of view, okay? So if you see on the sagittal cut, as I expand, let me minimize it, how these other windows minimize, okay? So that's pretty much to set the boundaries of the field of view. So now, how do I verify that the stitching is proper? Because the stitching has to be proper in order for the guide to be precise, because you have to fabricate the guide on top of the model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand that upper left side, okay, window, and I'm going to go on the bar on the side. I'm going to start surfing or scrolling down and up, and if you see the outline of the canine is perfectly lined up with the model, okay? So if you go to surface here, this hint is basically the outline. If I click it and remove it, you see that the hint completely disappears, okay? One other mistake that my staff did here is that they didn't put a cotton roll when they were taking the CT scan. So I see, in this case, we're fortunate because the patient has a very defined bone and we can see where the tissue is and the depth of that bone and all that stuff. But usually as a customary, you want to make sure they put a cotton roll all the way in the vestibules so you get that black void and it's easier to read the CT scan. So now that we're sure the lineup of the STL file is properly with the CT scan, you can see it here also on the horizontal cut. As you go up and down, you see the outline of the teeth, how it completely follows the outline of the model. Okay, so that tells you that the stitching is perfect. It's pretty good. So now we're going to place an implant on number 3 position. So how you can go to this field, to this area, is either scroll on the upper left side and you see how these 3 lines are until you get to number 3 position, right there. Or you can, right on the horizontal cut, you can double click on it and immediately will go there. So we're right there on where the implant should go. But as we know, we need a prosthetic, we need a what the crown is going to look like on that space. So one of the features that Blue Sky Bio has is easy to do a very quick wax up in small cases. How do you do that? Is you first line it up as we line it up to number 3 area. Then you're going to select on the upper buttons. There is one that is tooth, add tooth. You're going to go ahead and click on that. And you're going to select first the size. I'm going to put a medium one. And it's tooth number 3. And I'm going to use the library. I don't think it gave me the option of the library here. It used to give you options of the library. Yeah, right here on the top. So I'm going to see you have all these libraries. So I'm going to just keep it as it is right now. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now if you see my cursor of the mouse turn to an X with a tooth, to a cross with a tooth, so I'm going to drop it right where it should go. I'm going to click on it and you see that tooth drops in there. So how do you line it up to the model? You go ahead and maximize the 3D rendering of the CT scan and you see the tooth in there. Now the cone beam is kind of bothering me, so what I do is I go to surface here. And if you see, it has the STL surface that you import to the computer. to the scan, and then it has the CT surface that is the actual rendering, 3D rendering of the patient. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in visible here. Where it says visible, I'm going to go ahead and click on it, and it's going to disappear temporarily. So now I have options to manipulate my model. Once again, you can use the 3 buttons. You experiment which one does what, and don't do it with a Mac because it's going to drive you crazy. So first, I'm gonna, by clicking in the middle or on the tooth itself, you can click and drag it, and then with this arrow or circumferences, you can move it to different positions. Okay, you can expand the tooth in different positions, so you can fill the space. I'm gonna make it now. I'm gonna make it wider, like the other molar, a little bit narrower. We don't need to be as wide as the other because it's gonna be an implant. So I'm gonna go ahead and incline it, and I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. Let me go ahead and, if you go on top, it appears. So I'm gonna make it longer. I'm gonna make it wider. Okay, now I look at it in different positions, and I want to move that tooth up a little bit, and now I want to rotate it a little bit until I can get the position that I want. Okay, so it's a matter of playing with it. That is going to help you to manipulate the software. So that's a pretty good position. It's a little bit out. I'm going to make that tooth a little bit longer again, and then I'm going to rotate it in a little bit, tiny bit. I'm going to raise it up, and I'm going to follow that curve speed here. And I'm going to look at it from different angles. I want to bring it back in a little bit and rotate it right there. And that's pretty good. I mean, that's pretty good for a quick wax up that you can do with this. Now, very important, guys. After you do that, you want to make sure that tooth gets locked. Okay, how do you lock it? Is you go to the panel here on the right side, go to tooth list, and you want to put that lock. Put that lock now that those coordinate does not appear when your mouse goes on top of it. Okay, so I'm going to minimize this window, and now I'm going to maximize the sagittal cut. Okay, I'm right in the middle of that tooth right there, and I'm going to maximize it, and that tooth is locked in there, and I'm going to add the implant. So you go to implant here on the top, add an implant, and then you select what type of implant you're going to place. So this we're going to do blue Astra, but I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it Astra here, the Blue Sky Bio, and now it has. Let's see here, compatible with Astra. Astra here. So I'm going to put a 4.5 implant by 11. Let's say let's see what happens. So I select it, I click OK, and I drop the implant with that cross, and the implant, I drop it right in place. Now with the sphere, I can start manipulating and determining the depth of the implant. If you see, we're going to go into the sinus. We're going to use a sinus vertical approach with Versa. The other thing is, as you see, I want to see what the dimension is from the platform to the actual cervical area is. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to select the distant measure ruler, and I'm going to drop a dimension here, and I'm about 4 millimeters. So I'm pretty happy with that. I might move it. I'm going to deselect the ruler if I don't want to make more marks, and I'm going to go ahead and grab that implant one more time, and I'm going to raise it up a little bit more. Now I want to see what the lateral view is. So I go ahead and reduce that window. One trick that I do is this green plane right here. Okay, you can grab it and you can rotate it. What it does is it rotates the view around the implant. So if I grab it here, you are going to see on this window how things are going to move, okay? So you see the different views. So what I do is I go around between the molar and the premolar in this case. Let me raise up a little bit. Let me raise up a little bit the view here so I can see the teeth right there. And you see the root of the premolar and the molar. So I'm gonna line it up, just I transect those two roots. So now I have a perfect view here. I maximize that. And now I can play with the position, the mesial-distal position of that implant, okay? I can rotate the whole view and make sure in my whole circumferential view, everything is going to be in bone and I'm not going to be touching any roots, okay? So I minimize that. And now my final check is I maximize the model and I want to see where my direction of my implant is coming, which I'm happy with. The screw is going to be on the occlusal, and I'm pretty happy with this location of the implant as well, right here. So another thing that you have to do here is you go to the implant list and you drop another lock, because if not, when your mouse is around these areas, you're going to be moving things around by mistake. If you do it by mistake, just undo it with this arrow up here, okay? So now I'm going to fabricate my surgical guide. I'm going to fabricate my surgical guide. I'm going to go ahead and maximize my STL model, and I'm going to go to the tooth list, and I'm going to make that tooth list invisible if I can. Sometimes I think this is a glitch that the software has, is when you have only one implant, it doesn't allow you to completely make it invisible. Okay, so since you already know that the implant is in the right position, let's see here if I can go ahead and with this setting right here, if I put remove tooth, it did remove the tooth. Add tooth, no, it just remove it. Okay, I'm fine if it remove it because I already locked the implant. So now I'm going to add the surgical guide. On the panel, you have the guide panel. You click on the guide panel, and you're going to go ahead and select the model, in which we only have one model in this case. Put maxilla, and you're going to now draw in surgical guide here. You're going to draw a curve, okay? So usually, as I said, you want to select at least 3 teeth. In this case, I'm going to start on the lateral over here, and I'm going to start kind of pushing shift and keeping shift pushed. I'm going to go ahead and start making points here. Do shift, click it again. Then I'm going to go around here, and I'm going to go now on shift, shift again, go around. Oops. So you can move this around. And after you close that, you can now also move things around if you want more soft tissue support. In this case, you don't need it because it's too supported. This is more than enough. So you create some support over here. If you want to make it thicker so it doesn't break, that's fine with me. You play by ear, and you learn as you go. So I'm going to make it up to the gingival so we can then open windows if we want. And that's the outline of the surgical guide. I'm going to raise this up to see if it lets me raise it up. right here. Yes, it did. And now I'm going to go ahead and click on, I'm going to go ahead and click on Create Surgical Guide. So I'm going to click Create Surgical Guide. The surgical guide will not be designed with the relevant osteotomy holes. Okay, so very important, very good mistake that I'm making here. So what it's telling me is that I have not created the tube, okay? And that's a good mistake at this point. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to implant list. I'm gonna add the tube right here, okay? I'm gonna add the tooth for a pilot drill. Pilot drills right here on the offsets. Remember what we talked about, we don't want to do fully guided on this. It's almost hard, it's very hard to get in. So the guide hole is going to be at 3.33, 35, and then the height of the tube is going to be 4 millimeters, and the offset, that is the dimension from the platform to the top of the tube, is 9 millimeter. And now that I have my tube there, I'm going to go to guide panel again, and I'm going to create the surgical guide. Now it doesn't give me that error. This is, you can ignore this, just put save, and it'll start creating the surgical guide. So after it creates this surgical guide, you can put windows and then recreate a second surgical guide that is going to have the windows. So if you see, it created the surgical guide here. And then if you go to surfaces, now we have the maxilla and the surgical guide, okay? Now I'm going to open another window right here on the front just for the exercise to make sure. See how it opens enough for your handpiece to go down? And now I'm going to open another window that is right here. I'm going to right click at a window and you start, this is going to be the outline of your window. So you determine how wide, how long, and what distance, what level you want that window. So I'm going to leave it there. I want to leave enough support for the surgical guide not to break. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to guide panel again, and I'm going to create another surgical guide. I'm going to click create surgical guide, save, and it's going to create a second surgical guide with that perforation of the window. So this is your second one. Now you can see the tooth as you're seating your guide, making sure it's sitting properly. And now what I need to do the last is I'm going to put a name to it. His name is Garcia. So I'm going to apply text down here. Apply text. Oops, I need to create the text first. So I'm going to click here, Garcia E. Now, how you engrave it is you are going to drag and maximize or minimize the model until you know exactly where you want the name to be embedded or carved, okay? So I'm gonna do it right there, and I'm gonna apply text right here, and it's gonna emboss the name instead of engraving it. So actually I'm gonna engrave it, okay? So when I polish it, it doesn't polish it off. So Garcia E, and your guide is ready. So how do you export it? If I click here, save surgical guide, it's going to tell me that I don't have any license. You have to buy the license for export. So it'll cost you 6 licenses, probably about 20 bucks each one to fabricate a surgical guide. And or if you don't click here, you can go here on file, and then you go to export, okay, export data, and it's gonna show you the same thing. You can export it that way as well, okay? So now we have three surfaces, that is guide with window, surgical guide and maxilla. I don't want to see the other two. Let's put the other two invisible. This is what we have. So we're right on, okay? So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, please let me know, okay? And I'll see you guys on the next fellowship.